Hello and welcome. Today we bring you Dr. Michael Garcia. Michael, welcome.
Thank you for having me here, Rahul.
Absolutely. Dr. Garcia, you are not new to our audience, especially through our publications. You have been part of COVID-19 registry since beginning, but I would like you to introduce yourself to those who have not heard from you before.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Garcia. I'm a former Boston University fellow. I'm currently an intensivist at Valley Medical Center in Washington. And I'm going to be discussing with you today one of my manuscripts with the virus registry, variation in use of repurposed medications among patients with COVID-19.
Fantastic. We would like to congratulate you, Mike, on that one. You've been part of quite a few landmark manuscripts in last 2 years from COVID-19. So congratulations. Once again, I think it was published in Critical Care Medicine. It's not the news anymore, but we would like you to share your main findings. What are the results and what was the learning from it and how you did it?
Okay. So just a little background. So with the rapid spread of COVID and high mortality, there definitely was an urgency to identify some effective therapeutics to treat COVID. And the long research and development timelines for novel therapeutics, kind of led us to start using repurposed medications as a means of, trying to treat these patients and with this new novel disease. And our study kind of tried to answer, a lot of different questions about the use of these repurposed medications. So what ones were more frequently used and, what proportion of patients receive these repurposed medications? How did that use of repurposed medications change over time? And what impact did these medications have on mortality? So using the virus registry, we looked at adults over 18 years of age who were hospitalized with COVID between February 15th of 2020 and April 12th of 2021. And we separated it into an early pandemic stage, which was from February to June of 2020, and a later pandemic stage from July 2020 to April 2021, kind of coinciding with the arrival of clinical evidence on some of these medications in terms of seeing how practice changed over time. And we looked at, variation in use of these repurposed medications across different hospitals. And so the repurposed medications of interest included antivirals, corticosteroids, hydroxychloroquine, immunomodulators, which was a composite of IL-6 inhibitors, anakinra, and JAK inhibitors, as well as therapeutic dose anticoagulants. And we used random effects logistic regression models to quantify the variation using median odds ratio, which is the increase in odds of a patient receiving these medications if they're treated at a low use hospital compared to a high use hospital. So it's just a measure of variation. And basically what we found was, very wide variation in use of these medications. In terms of antivirals, median percent use was 21%, corticosteroids was 38%, hydroxychloroquine was 14%, immunomodulators 6%, and therapeutic anticoagulation 27%. And in terms of the variation in use, median odds ratio for antivirals was 4.8, corticosteroids 3, hydroxychloroquine 5.27, immunomodulators 4.9, and therapeutic anticoagulation 5.9. So very wide, increases in odds ratio depending on what hospital you're treated at. And, ideally, it shouldn't matter what hospital you're at being treated for any condition, you should receive the same treatment ideally. And I think this just highlights the point that we didn't have a lot of evidence initially with managing COVID, and, people were kind of using their own kind of clinical experience, their own kind of gut feeling on how to treat these patients. And that's evidenced by these wide odds ratios. And then in terms of changing in medication use over time, compared to that early pandemic stage that we set out, the late pandemic stage, you had increased use of antivirals, corticosteroids, again, coinciding with clinical evidence that we eventually developed on some randomized trials, with decreased use of hydroxychloroquine and the immunomodulators, and therapeutic anticoagulation. There wasn't really a difference in use over time. And we also didn't see any difference in mortality, in those hospitals that used, very little repurposed medications, treated patients more conservatively, just with supportive care, compared to those who had high use of some of these repurposed medications. And that was kind of the main findings of our study. So very wide variation in repurposed medication use, but no difference in mortality, based on use of any of these medications.
Got it. So as a summary, if somebody who's not in medical field, as a layman who's looking at it, are you suggesting that they should look for hospitals who have more consistent use of evidence-based practice, and understanding that it was pretty fluid? Or were you allowed to identify these patients? How did you do the study?
Can you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
Were you allowed to identify these hospitals where the more use inconsistent with the evidence-based practice which was available at the time?
So, in the first half, that early pandemic phase, there was, a lot of different practice phenotypes, so different, use of varying medications. But again, we didn't have any evidence then. In the later pandemic stage, it was much more uniform. I think, most of the hospitals, if not all of them, were consistently using corticosteroids, consistently using antivirals, not using hydroxychloroquine. So I think it just shows kind of in that early stage, a lot of us, were trying different things. We didn't have any evidence. We were trying to help our patients, but we didn't know exactly what was helpful or not. Whereas once we had that evidence, practice converged, became more uniform. I think the variation in the later pandemic stage was much less than the early pandemic stage.
That makes sense. So as you were doing it, you've been part of it 2.5 years. Were these are anticipated results, or any surprises there when the results came out?
I think it was anticipated that practice would definitely converge based on the evidence, but I thought it was very surprising how widely practice varied kind of in the early pandemic phase. And hospitals, I think, rightly so, not kind of trying to help their patients, were trying different things. And it was just interesting to see, how much difference there was between hospitals during that early period.
Absolutely. What has been your experience? I believe that this is, if not your first time, but working this collaboratively with CCM Discovery Group. So what has been your experience as a young investigator in virus COVID-19 registry?
So I was involved with the registry, very early on at the start, and it's, been a great experience, very collegiate atmosphere. It was great, getting mentorship, not only from my own mentor at Boston University, but mentors across the country, and everyone's been so supportive and collaborative, and it's been a very rewarding experience.
Well, thank you. Good to hear that. And what's your advice for young investigators, junior investigators, or those who are in fellowship or just coming into as a staff member, from your own experience? Of course, COVID-19 pandemic kind of excel the pedal on all research coming in, but what would be your advice for them?
For young researchers, I would say, don't give up. Research is it's hard. You will get rejected a lot, but you just have to persevere and advocate for yourself. If you really have to push to, get these collaborative efforts going with different institutions, and you really just need to advocate for yourself to be more involved, I think, to get the ball rolling on this.
Absolutely. And then, societies as well as the groups like Discovery are a good vehicle to have that networking, and then collaborative mentorship come along as well. Oh, very, very good. We started asking our faculty members on these panels, sharing a fun fact about them, which, most people would not guess. So if you're comfortable sharing with us at least one or more fun facts about you, it doesn't have to do anything with academics, or it could be within academics.
A fun fact. I am an avid Frisbee golf player.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be my fun fact.
Tell us about it. So you said avid Frisbee golf.
Yeah, so it's
I've
you have
seen
the little
people
cage, and it's usually courses in like parks and stuff, and it's like golf except with a Frisbee. So you have to get it in the little cage.
Have you taken part in any regional national tournaments or
No, I am not a professional. I am definitely amateur
oh,
level player.
so almost a year ago, I saw noticed something in the park that's grown men, grown people on their backpack. They have different types of frisbees, and they're throwing from one place to another place. I've played frisbee in my time, but just for fun. You stand in two teams and you throw at it. But they were actually going from one place to another one, and that's where I learned the term frisbee golf. So I'm so glad that I was aware of it, so I could make understand. I could understand it today. Otherwise, it'll be a question for you.
Yeah, no, it's fun. There's different discs. There's a driver. There's a putter. It's great.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Garcia. We thank you for coming online today with us. We thank you for your participation and leading some of these efforts. And we thank you for publishing some of the very high quality publications as a first author and contributing as any other author from Virus COVID-19 Registry.
Thank you.
And those who are watching, please like, subscribe to our channel, write in comment section what you like from Dr. Garcia's talk, and then we'll definitely bring him back. He has a couple more publications either published or on the way, so we'll be recording him as they come in. Thank you for listening.